The sun dipped behind the snowy peaks of Xizang, Tibet, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet. The wind carried the faint sound of temple bells, echoing through the valley where prayer flags danced on the rooftops. On one of those rooftops, a young girl named Lhamo lay on her back, her hands behind her head, gazing at the endless blue above. Every evening, she waited for the same moment, when the distant roar of engines would break the silence. High above the mountains, fighter jets would streak across the sky, silver wings glinting in the last light of day. They looked like shooting stars to her, powerful, fearless, and free. Her father, Dorya, a retired mountain rescuer, often joined her on the rooftop. His weathered face carried stories of storms, cliffs, and courage. When the jets thundered by, Lhamo would point excitedly, her eyes wide with wonder. "Baba," she'd whisper, "who are they?" Her father smiled, his gaze following the fading trails of the jets. "They are the guardians of our skies," he said softly. "They fly so others can live in peace. Maybe one day you'll fly among them, my little hawk." That night, as the stars emerged, Lhamo made a silent promise to herself. "I will touch those skies one day." From that moment, her life changed. While other children in the village spent their afternoons playing in the fields, Lhamo could be found studying every book she could find about airplanes, clouds, and flight paths. She built paper planes and tested them from the hilltop, studying how they glided in the thin mountain air. Her mother often worried. "It's not easy for girls, Lhamo. The world up there belongs to men." But Lhamo would smile and answer, "Then I'll build my own wings." As she grew older, her dream became a whisper among the villagers. Some admired her determination, but most laughed. "Fighter pilot? She's too small. She should be a teacher, not chasing jets. Girls can't handle those machines." Lhamo never replied. She just worked harder. At dawn, she ran through the mountain trails, training her body to breathe in the thin air. At night, she studied under the dim light of an oil lamp while others slept. One winter morning, snow blanketed the valley, and Lhamo stood outside, watching the clouds roll like waves. She stretched out her arms, pretending to steer through the sky. In her heart, she could already feel the weight of a pilot's helmet, the vibration of an engine, the rush of wind past her face. Her father watched from the doorway, pride and worry mixing in his eyes. "The sky is wide, Lhamo," he said, "but it's also full of storms." She turned and smiled. "Then I'll learn to fly through storms, Baba." And so began her journey, a dream born on a rooftop, carried by mountain winds, and destined to rise above the clouds. The morning sun burned through the mist as Lhamo stepped through the towering gates of the Air Force Academy. Her heart raced as jets screamed across the sky, their thunder shaking the ground beneath her boots. She paused for a moment, clutching her duffel bag, and whispered, "This is where dreams learn to fly." But she quickly learned that dreams didn't soar easily here. The first week was brutal. The air was thinner, the schedule harsher, and the expectations even higher. From dawn drills to night studies, cadets were pushed to their limits. Lhamo struggled to adjust to the altitude, her lungs burning with every breath. Some days, she collapsed on her bunk, dizzy and trembling. "Maybe this isn't for you," one senior cadet smirked. "Go back to your mountains." She didn't answer. She simply stood again, slower, weaker, but never defeated. Language was another wall. The Academy's technical manuals were written in complex terms, and many of her classmates came from big cities where English and Mandarin were second nature. Lhamo spent her nights translating every line, repeating terms aloud until her tongue ached. Her roommate, May, once found her asleep at her desk, pages of flight manuals scattered around. "You're going to break yourself," May whispered. Without opening her eyes, Lhamo replied softly, "Then I'll rebuild stronger." As training advanced, they moved to flight simulators, machines that tested coordination, precision, and courage. The first time Lhamo sat inside, her hands trembled on the controls. The screen filled with clouds, wind alarms screamed, and she lost control, crashing within minutes. Laughter filled the room. One instructor, arms crossed, shook his head. "You'll never make it past the simulator," he said bluntly. Flying isn't for everyone. That night, she didn't go back to the dorm. She stayed in the simulator room, replaying the same flight again and again, crashing, restarting, adjusting over and over until her hands were blistered. Weeks passed. Slowly she improved. Her landings became smoother, her instincts sharper. She learned to trust the feel of the aircraft, to breathe with the engine's rhythm. When final evaluations arrived, tension filled the air. Each cadet was assigned a complex mountain flight simulation, steep terrain, crosswinds, and limited visibility. Failure meant dismissal. As Lhamo's turn came, whispers followed her. The village girl won't make it. She's not ready. But when the simulation began, Lhamo's face was calm, her breathing steady. She guided the aircraft through virtual mountain passes, adjusting pitch and throttle with grace. The alarms blared once, she corrected instantly. Her landing was smooth, precise, flawless. The room fell silent. The same instructor who once doubted her stared at the monitor, then slowly stood. "Welcome to the skies, Cadet Lhamo," he said, a faint smile breaking through his stern face. As she stepped out of the simulator, exhaustion washed over her, but so did triumph. For the first time, she wasn't just chasing her dream, she was flying it. The Himalayan peaks glowed pale beneath a bruised sky. Storm clouds gathered like a living beast, swallowing sunlight and silence alike. At the Tibet Air Command Base, sirens shattered the stillness. A message flashed across the control screen. A civilian aircraft had gone missing near the Himalayan border, caught in violent turbulence and radio blackout. Inside the command room, officers barked coordinates, radar screens blinked erratically, and static filled the comms. Amid the chaos, a calm voice rose above the noise. "Lieutenant Lhamo Dorje, report to Hangar Bay immediately." Within minutes, she was in her flight suit, helmet tucked under her arm, eyes sharp with focus. Her years of training had forged her into one of the Air Force's best rescue pilots. Yet even for her, flying into a Himalayan storm meant staring directly into nature's fury. Her co-pilot, Lieutenant Han, looked uneasy as they ran toward their jet. "Lhamo, visibility's near zero. Command says the storm's expanding fast. Maybe we should wait for backup." She paused for half a second, feeling the wind whip across her face. The thought of civilians freezing and lost in that storm flickered through her mind. Waiting wasn't an option. "If we wait," she said firmly, "they won't last another hour." They strapped in. The engines roared to life, shaking the hangar. The base crew saluted as the jet's afterburners ignited, cutting through the mist like a blade of fire. The moment they ascended, the world turned white. The radar flickered. Wind slammed against the cockpit, tossing the jet like a paper toy. Lhamo's gloved hands gripped the controls, her jaw set in silent determination. "Altitude dropping," Han shouted. "Adjust flaps," Lhamo commanded. Her voice was steady, slicing through the storm's chaos. Outside, lightning flashed against jagged peaks, painting the sky in violent bursts of blue and white. The radio crackled uselessly, all channels dead. Only the hum of the engine and their breathing filled the cabin. Han's hands trembled. "We're blind out here, Lhamo. We'll crash before we find them." Lhamo closed her eyes for a heartbeat, remembering her father's words. "The sky is wide, but it's full of storms." Then she whispered to herself, "And I learned to fly through storms." She reopened her eyes, calm, focused, fierce. "Trust your wings," she said, her voice cutting through the static. "We'll bring them home." Minutes later, her sharp eyes caught a flicker on the infrared scanner, a faint heat signature hidden in the clouds. She adjusted course instantly. "There they are!" Descending through the turbulence, she pushed the jet lower, skimming dangerously close to the mountainside. The lost aircraft appeared below, tossed by wind, one engine flaming, passengers visible through shattered windows. "Activate beacon lock," she ordered. The targeting system pinged, locking on the crippled craft. She relayed coordinates back to base with broken but urgent clarity. As rescue choppers mobilized, Lhamo flew alongside the damaged plane, guiding it through the corridor of storm clouds. Her voice on the radio was firm yet soothing. "You're not alone. Follow my light." For 2 agonizing hours, They fought the winds together, until finally, both aircraft broke through the clouds into open sky. Sunlight burst across the horizon. The storm faded behind them. "Command, this is Lieutenant Lhamo Dorje," she said, her voice trembling with relief. "Target located. Civilian safe!" Cheers erupted at the base. But Lhamo only smiled faintly, her eyes still on the horizon. The storm was gone, but its fire still burned in her heart. The storm had finally broken. As Lieutenant Lhamo Dorje's jet descended through the thinning clouds, the first rays of sunrise spilled across the Himalayas, soft gold melting into endless white. Below, the Air Command base shimmered under a thin layer of frost. The radio crackled with a single voice. "Welcome home, Falcon 1. Mission accomplished." Lhamo exhaled for the first time in hours. Her arms ached, her heartbeat steady but heavy. Across from her, co-pilot Han grinned, eyes wide with disbelief. "We actually did it," he said, voice trembling. She smiled faintly beneath her oxygen mask. "We didn't do it," she corrected softly. "We had to do it." As their jet touched down, the runway lights reflected off the silver fuselage. When the engines powered down, silence filled the cockpit, that deep, grounding silence after the storm. The hangar doors opened and a wave of sound crashed in, cheers, clapping, whistles. Dozens of officers and cadets stood waiting. Some saluted sharply. Others simply stared at her in awe. For the first time, Lhamo, the girl once mocked for dreaming too high, had become the living proof that no height was too great to reach. When she stepped down from the jet, her boots touched the ground with a kind of reverence. Her commander, Colonel Xizang, walked forward, his uniform immaculate, his expression proud. "You disobeyed the weather order," he said sternly. Lhamo straightened her shoulders. "Yes, sir." He paused for a long moment, then smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "And because of that, 62 people are alive today." The crowd broke into applause again. The rescued passengers, airlifted back hours later, were standing near the hangar doors, wrapped in blankets. When they saw Lhamo, they stepped forward one by one, lifting white Tibetan scarves, katas, symbols of gratitude and blessing, and waved them toward her. The wind carried their soft voices. "Tashi Delek, pilot. May the skies always watch over you." Her throat tightened. The girl who once lay on a rooftop dreaming of jets now stood before them. A pilot, a rescuer, a symbol. Colonel Xizang reached into a small case and pulled out a silver medal engraved with a single line. "Courage beyond the clouds." He pinned it gently to her uniform. "Lieutenant Lhamo Dorje," he declared, his voice echoing across the hangar. "You didn't just save lives, you lifted an entire generation's dreams." For a moment, Lhamo couldn't speak. The weight of the medal on her chest felt lighter than the weight of the promise she had once made to her father under the starlit sky of Xizang. She looked up toward the open hangar doors. The sun was rising now, its golden light spilling across the snow-capped peaks, turning the clouds into molten gold. In that glow, she saw herself as a little girl again, lying on the rooftop, pointing at distant jets and whispering, "One day I'll fly." Now, she finally had. The crowd saluted. The mountains stood still, and as the Tibetan wind swept across the airfield, Lhamo Dorje smiled through tears. Her dream, once only a whisper, had become part of the sky itself.